Hello, you all. I'm Diana Brienne, Health Crisis. You know, about 10 years ago, I faced a health crisis, and I'm a person who is very health conscious. I've always been healthy, never had a problem, never had anything, barely ever got the flu. And for me, I'm very physically active today. I run 5 miles a day. And, at 61 years old, which is my age, I take amazing care of who I am. And I always took amazing care of who I am, who I was. And so what happened about 10 years ago is, long story short, I was kind of rushing, which I don't normally rush. I was rushing through the house, and we had a little mother-in-law suite in another home that we had. And my husband had hung a suit jacket on a wooden hanger, but he had taken the suit off, and the wooden hanger was still there, but it was kind of poking outwards a little bit. But it was wedged against the door. And I was rushing through the house, and it was dark in the room, and as I was going through, I smacked into it head on, pretty forcefully, into my eye. And it's amazing that I have 20/20 vision to this day, and nothing happened to my eye that I'm able to see, and everything is good. And yet I was knocked to the floor. It was very, scary. I had just remembered a big actress who had had a ski accident and who had died from a brain hemorrhage. So I called my best girlfriend. She ran over to watch my two kids who were home at the time. I have three children, but one was in public school and the other two I was homeschooling. And so I told her, I said, I may have to go to the hospital. I don't know. I may have to, so I want you to be here in case I pass out or something happens. Well, I didn't pass out, but I did have a dental appointment that morning. And so I went to the dental appointment thinking, well, at least if I'm in the dental chair and something happens, they'll be able to resuscitate me or do whatever they need to do. And so I got to the dental chair, and we had decided to pull a back molar out that was chipped. And it was a wisdom tooth. It really didn't need to be removed, but we had opted to do it because, we just did. And he broke it. He broke it in the process. And he began to use a little silver hammer for a couple hours trying to get the tooth out, but he couldn't get the tooth out. So I ended up in emergency surgery that day for the tooth. So that was not a good day. So fast forward a few months, and I began to suddenly exhibit symptoms. One morning I woke up and I had a back pain. I went down to get a cup of coffee, told my husband I was going back to the room, and before I knew it, I was down on the floor. I was clammy, and I had passed out. I remember letting myself down to the floor. My husband shook me and got me, where I was alert, and I wandered back into the mother-in-law suite, and I laid on the bed in there, but my heart was racing. So I thought I would give it a little bit of time, but that day my leg began to just nonstop quiver. And so I couldn't really figure out what to do, but I didn't go to the doctors at that point. And so fast forward, my husband had to move to another state for his business, for his career, and we were going to follow in 1 year. I wanted to stay behind and finish up my other son's schooling, as well as we were remodeling the house, preparing it to sell. And so I stayed behind with my children. That was not the best choice, that looking back on, because I got pretty sick in the next few months. I developed all kinds of symptoms. So I went after about 2 weeks to my doctor, who I'd had for 5 years. He told me I was just suffering anxiety and menopause. And I thought, no, I never had anxiety. And even if I did, I've always been able to handle it. And so, he told me it was that or menopause. And I thought, no, this is not menopause. So then I went back again, and he told me again, same thing. And I begged him to see a cardiologist, and my heart felt like it was racing. I had so many symptoms. I could go on for days about the different kinds of symptoms, just pretty much in every body part. Numbness, tingling, headaches, dizziness, lightheadedness, distortion when I was walking, and my balance, bumping into walls. I ripped my arm open with bumping into a nail because I lost my balance. I couldn't, like if I went went to pull something out of the oven, I would sometimes burn myself and not notice it for a few minutes. I began to have choking sensation. I mean, it was just really a wild array of crazy symptoms. And after a few months and a lot of different doctors, a lot of different specialists, no one could figure it out. I finally had gone to, I decided to go to the emergency room, and they sent me home. They said my heart was fine. I thought maybe I was having a heart attack. And so then what happened was I went to another emergency room, and I told the doctor there about a dream I had about 2 weeks prior, where my mother told me I had a lesion on the left side of the brain, which I always thought of lesion as cancer, but that's not necessarily so. And so he put me in a CAT scan, and when I came back out of the CAT scan, he said to me, "Ma'am, we have to keep you. You have a lesion on the left side of your brain, just like your mother said in your dream." And my mother had been passed for about 2 years at that point. So she came to me in a dream and told me I had a lesion on the left side of the brain. So I asked him if it was cancer, and he said, no, it's a blood vessel that had broken. You had a brain bleed, a brain aneurysm. Well, to this day, I don't really know if all my symptoms were caused from the brain aneurysm, or if that indeed, it wasn't like the major brain aneurysms that people have, because most, a large percentage of brain aneurysms, people die or end up very debilitated. And I was functional. So if indeed it was a brain aneurysm, as they said it was, then I was a walking brain aneurysm. But I had symptoms that continued on for the next 6 months at least, just different symptoms. And it was very scary because I was still in one state, my husband was in another. I was raising our children. I was very weak, and I, just was very scared and frightened. I never let my children know. I never let them know I was sick because, didn't want to scare them. And so I kept it to myself. And so it was a very, very challenging and difficult time. So to this day, I don't really know exactly if I had a brain aneurysm. They say I did, so I believe them. And if I did, I was very, very lucky to have made it through, because most people who have those really, it's much worse than what I went through. And I can say that I went through a terrible time, a really, really terrible time. And so I'm grateful to be here. I appreciate life. I appreciate where I'm at. And, looking back almost 10 years now at that experience, it really taught me a lot. It taught me, I was always compassionate, but now I have an understanding of when someone goes through a health crisis, the fear, how frightened they can be, how doctors can be, you can have great doctors and you can have doctors that are not so great. And I had quite a few not so great doctors, and I had quite a few great doctors. How life can just be turned upside down, and you feel like everyone else is living such a happy, normal life, and there you are, not knowing if you're going to live or if you're going to die. So I've been there, and I can tell you now, 10 years later, I'm out running 5 miles a day. I feel terrific. I'm doing wonderful, and God bless anyone going through a health crisis. From my house to yours, I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.